Hi and welcome back to the channel. Recently I released a video on how to save money on your smart home lighting by using a Sonoff switch rather than individual smart bulbs. Now I released a short on that, which unfortunately I used the term hack on, and I suppose let's just deal with that. Of course, I'm only joking. But in reality, what I wanted to do is go through today on how I put together this solution using that Sonoff light switch and Home Assistant. So the key thing when doing this is to make sure you've got somebody qualified or certainly certified to do this work. If you're not sure, a lot of this can be done yourself, but if you're not sure, consult a qualified electrician. Now I've got some additional help in here. One of my family members used to be a qualified electrician, so it kind of helps there. Now I'll be honest, the wiring in this light switch is not up to standard or code. However, the previous owner kind of left a lot of the house like this. So unfortunately, there are cowboys out there. I'm not going to try and fix some of these challenges. I'm just going to get this operational. Now what we've done is labelled up some of the switch lives so that we know what they are. The reason I've got more than 3 is because one feeds out into the conservatory. We've actually got an additional 2 here, which we couldn't find where they actually went. So we didn't think they had actual general purpose, so we've kind of just left those for now, and they don't seem to be having any negative impact on any of the lights in the house. So it's easy to just kind of mark up your cables at this point. You know, obviously if you've got your current wiring, you can kind of work out where things go. Now I did have a 2-way connector that we removed because the Sonoff is only 1-way, but that doesn't matter. I'm solving that problem by using a different Wi-Fi switch. The final thing is the black cables going into the block connector are my neutrals, so I'm lucky enough to have a neutral. You will need a neutral wire for this. If you can't get one here, sometimes it will be up in the rose crown and you can pull it from there. So if we look at the back of the Sonoff now, we've got our neutral in on the left hand side, then our permanent switch live or our permanent live in, and then all of our switch lived devices, so 1, 2 and 3 at the top. So wiring wise, like I said, it is only a 1-way switch, but you can negate some of the challenges around that by using an additional Wi-Fi switch at the other end, but quite easy to wiring. So we had to move some of the wiring over to the left hand side and alter the back box a little bit, but here are our cables ready to be presented into the Sonoff.
That's the blanking plate fitted and connectors put in.
So here is the complete light installed, and you'll see that I've got a really rubbish blanking plate at the moment, but we'll kind of swap that out at a later date. I just wanted to find something that would do the job for now. Now, you can use this as a physical switch, and I have recorded this in slow motion just so that you can see the key presses. It is just a feather touch that you need to do on those. So each one of those lights will individually control each one of those lights without the need for an app. So if the app goes down or the internet goes down, if you're not using a Zigbee solution, then that will work without any challenges. Now on the other side of my kitchen, I used to have a 2-way switch which enabled me to turn on just one of the lights in the kitchen. Now what I've done is replaced this with this Wi-Fi Zigbee switch, And I programmed this in Home Assistant, which I'll show you in a short moment, to basically do an automation to switch certain parts of that light on. So this one, a single press will turn on the light. As you can see, it does seem slow in this video. It's just because I've done it in slow motion. It is instantaneous, to be honest. I just slowed this video down so that I've got the ability to get the voiceovers in for this. So each one of those have got their individual bits linked to them. The good thing is you can actually set up additional scenes. So there is double presses and holds with these as well. So I've not set them up yet, but what I might do is basically set the middle button that when you hold it will turn all 3 lights on, or toggle all 3 lights, and then obviously doing the same thing there. So I'm just demonstrating how you would do a single or double click, but that's kind of how that works. Now, for removing the back, this just sits on a nice little mounting bracket. I haven't secured it with more than tape at the moment, and then it takes I think it's a 2430 battery. I didn't have any of those, and it didn't come with one, which was slightly annoying. But the key thing is obviously this doesn't need any additional wiring, and it just sits nicely on there. So we'll get that put back. Again, I'm not sure why I recorded in slow-mo. It just seemed like a good idea at the time. I suppose it gives me the opportunity to make sure that I was able to demo it properly. And there we go, it just slides back in. But yeah, let's go on to the Home Assistant part next, just to show you exactly how those scenes are set up. So before we go into the Home Assistant side of this, there's a few things that you need to have installed on Home Assistant. One is to have Home Assistant installed itself, and you could have it virtualized like I've done it on one of my other videos, or you could have it on a bare metal device. You can obviously run on something as simple as a Raspberry Pi. You will need a Sonoff or some kind of Zigbee device that can act as a router. So I've got a particular one that I use. I'll stick the link in the description, which does need to be flashed with a certain type of firmware to make it work effectively. And then the final thing that you'll need to do is have the likes of HAX installed and Zigbee to MQTT broker done. Now, I will kind of cover some of those off on another video. However, at this point, we're going to assume you've got all of those installed. If you've got all of those installed, then you'll be ready to go, and we'll move on. So going back into Home Assistant, the first thing we need to do is add the Sonoff LAN add-on. Now, if you just try and do this normally, it won't appear because it's a HAX based add-on. So like I mentioned, you will need to have HAX installed. What you can then do is search for Sonoff LAN. It's fairly high up. You can see it's kind of listed here, and then click download. Obviously the latest version at the time of recording is 3.3.1. So I'll just download that. It will need me to restart the server once it's complete. But you can kind of read a little bit about the switches and various other parts of that package itself. So just do a quick restart of the Home Assistant. The great thing is with Virtual Machine, it does seem to be very, very snappy to restart. I could have probably refreshed way before this and it would be online. So when we're back, we're just going to HAX, just double check it's installed. You can see it there, which is great, and we can just back out now. So going into settings, and it will be in here. Click on add, and then we should be able to type Sonoff now, and now we can see the package is there. So what it'll ask for is your credentials. So you will need to set up at this point an eWe Link account. Now long term, I'm not going to do it this way. I'm going to do it a completely different way, but I'm just going to sign in and use it this way for now. I will plan to flash these so I can just use these purely with my Zigbee broker. So, and then what I'm going to do is give that a link to the kitchen to make life easy. Now the other device I've already paired, so you can see this one here is paired on ready. Now it does interestingly show a picture of a Sonoff device. It's not. I think this is probably how these will look as well when they've got the correct firmware on, or the Toyo firmware, which is what I will probably do with the Sonoff. However, the easiest thing to test these once you've got them up and running is to go into the state and just press the buttons, and you'll see very quickly the action changes. So I'm going to keep a copy of that because it will come in handy. And what I'm going to do is double check the entity there to see what we can see. So we've got the battery and the action. So again, it's worth keeping that entity ID to hand in case I ever need it. However, what I'm going to do next is go into the Sonoff LAN thing and change the description of these lights just to make my life a little bit easier. So you can see that they've all got kitchen light switch at the moment, which doesn't really help me too much. Now in my kitchen I've got different areas. I've got one which is the breakfast bar, I've got one which is just kind of above the kitchen sink, and then one that is round near the fridge. So that's how I'm going to name them. Now I can just play with the toggles as well to kind of prove they work, which they were, which is great, so I can fully automatically control them from Home Assistant. However, what I want to be able to do is use my Wi-Fi switch as well. So now all I need to do is rename the last one, and this will be something along the lines of kitchen near fridge, or fridge switch, or something, or fridge like that will do. So now what I'm going to do is set up an automation for that Wi-Fi device, and I'm just going to make a normal blueprint, go into device, and I'm going to find the kitchen wireless light switch. And this is why naming stuff is really important, because you want stuff to be easily recognizable. So I've got one single action which I'll set. I'll add an action to device, and then what I will do is make action 1 turn on the one above the breakfast bar. So once I find kitchen again, I should really just type in K, it'd be a bit quicker. For some reason I like scrolling, and if we then select turn on, not turn on, we want toggle, and click save, and then just give it a name. And you should probably give it a description as well for best practice, but I'll just call this kitchen breakfast bar, and just add a description for this one. And that's done. And all I'll need to do is rinse and repeat for every other one, which has got to be set up and completed. So let's do that. So hopefully you've found this video informative. Now I want to cover off what we've discussed on this. Now I was looking at a problem around the cost-effective way of making my lighting smart when you've got an excessive amount of lights that would require changing, or you may have independent lights. You know, you see these nice wonderful swirly LED ones that you get these days, and you kind of think, how could I make that smart? Because they don't sell smart versions of those necessarily. So what I was looking at is, was there a way to actually replace the switch itself rather than the bulbs? And I found that solution just using Sonoff, and there are other products out there. But the good thing with the Sonoff one is eventually I'll be able to flash it with a different version of firmware that will give me further functionality, that it will just be completely Zigbee orientated. Now, I've done a lot of mine using Sonoff LAN, and I have covered off a little bit about that on the Home Assistant part of this video. However, I think this is a really, really useful way to adapt your household to smart lighting, because one of the biggest bugbears that my family have is when I swap stuff to smart lighting is you either have to take out the original switch so that people aren't constantly turning it on and off if you've got a Philips Hue, or you can buy these plastic covers, which I'm starting to use around my house to solve that problem. If you go down the route of one of these Sonoff devices, as long as you've got a neutral wire, you can fulfill both needs. It gives people a physical interface to turn the lights on and off, but it also gives a completely different way to do it using automation. Now, I haven't completely finished this setup because I'm waiting on my motion sensors to arrive, but the moment they arrive, I will probably do a very short video to tag on to this one that covers off exactly how I've done the motion sensor side. So if you have found this video informative, please go away and hit the like and subscribe button, because it helps me out, which helps you guys out because I can make more of this content. But also go away and possibly watch the wonderful videos that may have popped up on the screen right about here. And I will see you next time when I cover off more about home automation and smart lighting.